I'm Wendy Ashford, 68 years old, and I have read more loan files than most people read books. So I knew exactly what I was looking at when my daughter-in-law raised her glass at dinner and announced that they deserved a bigger house. "Your generation had it easy," Brittany said, smiling at the table. Everyone nodded. My son nodded. I set down my fork. I waited until the room was quiet. "Funny," I said. "I've been paying your mortgage for 6 years." Her wine glass slipped. It didn't shatter. It just tipped, and a long red line spread across the white cloth like a seam coming undone. Nobody moved to clean it. That was the beginning, not the end. Because the part that truly emptied that room came 3 weeks later, at a party meant to celebrate them. When I set a folder on the table and the lender picked up the phone. "Welcome back to Alpha Mom Stories, where the quietest woman at the table is usually the one holding every card. Pull up a chair, stay till the end, and you'll see why. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe." Let me back up because the dinner only makes sense if you know who was sitting at that table. I spent 32 years at a community bank in Marysville, Ohio. I read loan files. I learned to see the truth a family tried to hide behind a clean application. I could tell from a checking account who was drowning and who was just pretending to. People assume that kind of work makes you cold. It made me patient. My husband Tom passed in 2019, heart fast, no warning. We'd been married 41 years. He was the loud one. I was the one who read the fine print. After he was gone, the house felt too big and too quiet, so I sold it and bought something small with a porch. My family decided somewhere along the way that I had become simple. Sweet old Wendy, good with the grandkids, bad with the phone. They'd explain Venmo to me slowly. They'd take my plate before I was finished and call it helping. I let them think it. Here's a thing I learned in 32 years of banking. Letting people underestimate you is the cheapest insurance there is. You never have to perform. You just watch. And you remember. I read people the way I used to read files. Quietly. Front to back. And nobody at that dinner table remembered what I'd done for a living. They were about to. The underestimating had become a kind of family sport. At holidays, Aaron would hand me his phone to watch a video, then take it back to do the actual scrolling, like I might break it. Brittany would compliment my vintage sweaters in a voice that meant old. When the talk turned to money, interest rates, refinancing, the housing market, they'd change the subject as if I'd wandered in from another century. "Mom doesn't need to worry about all that," Aaron would say. "She's got her pension." I did have my pension. I also had 32 years of watching exactly this kind of market do exactly this kind of thing. But I smiled and let him pour me decaf and tell me again how hard it was out there for young families. What I had, that none of them counted, was time with the children. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I picked up Megan, who is 8 and asks why about everything, and Lucas, who is 5 and believes I am magic because I can find his shoes. I made them grilled cheese. I read to them on the old plaid couch. Those two were the reason I stayed quiet for so long. You'll understand that before this is over. Because letting people underestimate you is its own kind of savings account. And 6 years earlier, without a single word of credit, I had made the largest deposit of my life. It was the spring of 2020 when they found the house. A 3-bedroom colonial on Linden Court, $420,000, good schools, a yard for a swing set. Aaron called me that night, breathless. Brittany was pregnant with Lucas. They'd put in an offer. They were so happy I could hear it crackle down the line. Then the financing fell through. Their income didn't clear the underwriting. I knew it would the moment Aaron told me his debt to income because, again, 32 years. The loan officer who called me was Diane Pruitt. We'd worked side by side for 2 decades. "Wendy," she said gently, "they're short. If you co-sign and you've got the reserves, I can make this work." So I co-signed. I put my name beside theirs on the note. My credit, my reserves, my 32 years of never missing a payment. That's what closed on Linden Court. And then, because their monthly number was still tight, I set up something quiet. Every month, on the 1st, an automatic transfer left my account and covered the part they couldn't. $1,900. They paid what felt like a small rent and believed it was the whole thing. I never told them. I co-signed. I didn't co-own their pride. A young couple deserves to feel like they did it themselves, even when they didn't, even when their mother is the reason the lights stay on. That was the deposit. I'd find out, 6 years later, exactly how they planned to spend it. You have to understand Brittany to understand any of it. She grew up in a trailer park 2 counties over, the kind of poor that other children are cruel about. She told me once, early, before she learned to guard herself around me, about a girl in 4th grade who'd held her nose when Brittany walked past. She never forgot it. She built her whole adult life as an answer to it. So, Brittany curates. The car, the countertops, the school district, the photos. Everything must say, we are not that. And nothing terrifies her more than the suggestion that any of it was handed to her. That's why, the moment the ink dried on Linden Court, the story became, we bought it ourselves. She told her friends. She told her sister. She posted the front porch with a caption about hard work and no handouts. We did this on our own, she said at a barbecue, while I stood 10 feet away holding her son. I didn't correct her. I understood where it came from. A woman who's been made to feel small will spend her whole life refusing to feel small again, even if she has to stand on someone to do it. I felt for her. I still do. But understanding why someone steps on you is not the same as agreeing to lie there. It took me 6 years to learn the difference between those two things. Then came 2024 and the part they really never knew. Aaron lost his job that spring. A whole department gone in a Tuesday meeting. He didn't tell me for weeks. Brittany's idea, I think, because telling me would mean admitting the floor wasn't solid. By the time I found out, the mortgage was 60 days late, and a letter with the word default had arrived on Linden Court. I drove over while they were out. I have a key for the kids. I saw the letter on the counter, and I did what I know how to do. I called Diane. We refinanced. I brought the loan current and put real money down to reset it. Equity, the kind you can measure. The kind that sits in a house like a foundation nobody sees. My name went deeper into that property, not shallower. I didn't lecture. I didn't make Aaron explain himself. I just fixed it, the way you fix a thing you love before anyone wakes up. On the first of every month after that, my phone still buzzed with the same little notification. Auto draft sent, $1,900. I stopped even reading it. It was just the sound of my family being safe. I saved that house. I never told them how close they came to losing it. I thought that was kindness. I've since learned that some people, when you carry them quietly, simply assume the ground was always that solid and start planning what to build on top of you. Which brings me to the dinner. Aaron got promoted that fall. Regional manager, a real raise, well earned. Brittany planned a celebration at the house and called to invite me with a sweetness that put me on alert. Brittany was never sweet for free. Bring your apple cake, Wendy, she said. Everyone loves your apple cake. Then lighter, like an afterthought, we've got some exciting news too, big picture stuff. I made the cake, and then I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the file box in my closet, the one Tom used to call my second purse, and I pulled out the Linden Court documents, the note, the 2024 refinance, the equity statements, the auto draft record. I put them in a manila folder, the plain kind, soft yellow at the edges. I told myself I was just being tidy. That wasn't quite true. 2 weeks earlier, Brittany had asked me, far too casually, whether I still had anything to do with the house paperwork. I'd said no, I'd lied, and then I'd started getting ready. I almost left the folder in the car. It felt paranoid sitting there in my tote bag next to the apple cake, like bringing an umbrella to a clear sky. I'm glad I didn't leave it, because some part of me, the part that read 10,000 loan files, already knew what kind of weather was coming. The table was beautiful. Brittany does beautiful very well. Cloth napkins, the good wine, Lucas in a little collared shirt, Megan proud of a drawing she'd made of all of us. Aaron carved the roast. Trevor, Brittany's brother-in-law married to her sister, loud in the way of a man who's never been told to lower his voice, held court about his new truck. And Brittany was warm to me, unusually expensively warm. She refilled my glass before it was empty. She praised the apple cake twice. She asked about my porch, my friend Ruth, my health in a row, like a checklist. "You look wonderful, Wendy," she said. "Doesn't she look wonderful?" I said thank you. I did not relax. In 32 years of reading files, I learned that the warmest cover letter usually sits on top of the worst numbers. People are kindest right before they ask you for the thing they've already decided to take. Megan climbed into my lap with her drawing. Lucas showed me a loose tooth. I held my grandchildren and I watched my daughter-in-law glow across the candlelight, building towards something, and I felt the old, familiar quiet settle over me. The quiet of a person who already suspects the ending and is simply waiting to see how the others get there. Brittany only ever complimented me when she wanted something. Tonight she complimented me 4 times before the plates were cleared. It came with dessert. Brittany tapped her glass, though no one was talking over her, and stood. "We have news," she said. "With Aaron's promotion, we've been thinking about the future, about the kids, about space." She paused for effect. "We're going to buy a bigger house." Aaron beamed. Trevor whooped. Megan asked if she'd get her own bathroom, and everyone laughed. "There's a property over in Galloway," Brittany went on. 5 bedrooms, a real office, a pool, $700,000. She said the number the way some people say a prayer. We'd sell Linden Court, take the equity, and roll it into the down payment. We've already had an agent walk the numbers. That last part landed in me like a stone in a pond. Already had an agent. So this wasn't a dream over dessert. This was a plan, far enough along to have a professional attached. "We've built up real equity in Linden Court," Brittany said, looking around the table proud. "It's grown so much. That's what years of paying down a mortgage does." She believed it. That's the part I keep coming back to. She genuinely believed the equity was theirs, grown by their own discipline, a reward for being responsible adults. I set down my dessert fork very quietly, and I did not say anything yet. I wanted to hear the rest. I always want to hear the rest. You learn so much more about people when you let them finish. "It's just smart," Brittany said. "Honestly, we deserve it." Then she looked at me, and her voice took on that gentle, lecturing warmth people use when they're about to explain your own life to you. "I know it's a lot of money to your generation, Wendy, but things were different for you. Houses were cheap. 1 income, a handshake, and you were set." She smiled. "Your generation had it easy. Ours has to fight for everything." Your generation had it easy. I have thought about that sentence more than any other from that night. I bought my first house in 1981 at a mortgage rate of 16% on a bank teller's salary after growing up on a farm where easy was a word we used about cattle, not lives. I worked nights for my license. I buried a husband. I had spent 6 years and well over $100,000 quiet dollars making her specific life feel easy. But I didn't say any of that. Not yet. I just nodded slowly, the way they expected sweet old Wendy to nod, and I let the sentence sit on the table between us where everyone could see it. Aaron nodded along with his wife. "It's true, Mom. The market's brutal now." "Brutal," Trevor agreed, who had never in his life been brutalized by anything. I looked at the candlelight in my full glass of wine. I thought very calmly, "All right, now I know exactly where we are." And then Brittany delivered the part she'd clearly saved, the part that turned a rude dinner into something else entirely. "And here's the best bit," she said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "The Galloway place has a studio over the garage, its own little kitchen. We thought, Wendy, you could live there." She beamed. "Closer to the kids. You'd practically be built in. No more driving across town twice a week." Built in, like cabinetry. "You'd help with Megan and Lucas in the afternoons," she continued. "And we wouldn't have to do daycare pickup, and you wouldn't be rattling around that little place all alone. It just makes sense for everybody. For everybody." I did the translation in my head, the way I used to translate a loan application into the truth underneath it. They wanted to sell the house I'd saved, spend the equity I'd built, buy a home twice the size, and install me above the garage as unpaid full-time childcare. Out of the main house, out of the way, grateful. Trevor laughed. "Sweet deal, Grandma, maid's quarters and grandbabies." Megan, who is 8 and listens to everything, frowned and said, "Why can't Grandma have a real room?" And the adults laughed that off too, and nobody answered her. I squeezed Megan's hand under the table. Out of the mouths of children. This was not a spur-of-the-moment kindness. The studio, the schedule, the built-in. It had all been decided before I ever walked through the door. I could hear it in how smoothly it came out. So I set down my fork, I folded my napkin, and I said it as plainly as I'd say the weather. "Funny," I said. "I've been paying your mortgage for 6 years." For a second, nobody understood. Brittany laughed a little, the reflexive laugh you give a joke you didn't catch. "What do you mean, paying it?" she said. "I mean every month on the 1st since 2020, I said. $1,900, the part your income never covered. I'm a co-signer on Linden Court. My name is on the loan beside yours." The laugh died on her face. Her hand, still holding her wine, went loose. The glass tipped against her water goblet and went over, and that long red line spread across the white cloth, slow and bright, and not one person reached for a napkin. "No," Brittany said. "That's not. We pay the mortgage." "You pay part of it," I said. "You've always paid part of it. I've never minded. I'm telling you now because you're about to sell a house and spend money, and I think everyone at this table should know whose money it actually is." Aaron had gone the color of the tablecloth. Trevor's grin hung on his face like a coat on a hook, forgotten. I picked up my own glass, full, untouched, and I held it, perfectly steady, and I did not drink. I just waited. I am very, very good at waiting. Aaron recovered first, and he recovered in the worst possible direction. "Mom," he said, low, embarrassed, glancing at the guests. "Come on, don't be dramatic. You can afford it. It's not like it hurts you." There it was, the whole architecture of how they'd made peace with it, spoken out loud. Not she's generous, not we owe her, just she can afford it so it doesn't count. A gift, reclassified as a tax on being comfortable. "It's not about whether it hurts me, Aaron," I said. "It's about whether it's true." Trevor jumped in, because Trevor cannot stand 3 seconds of a quiet he didn't make. "I mean, sounds like Grandma's loaded," he said, grinning around the table, trying to turn it back into a party. "Hey, if you're handing out mortgages, my truck payment's brutal." A few of the guests laughed, uncertain. Brittany did not laugh. Brittany was staring at me now with a new expression, one I hadn't seen from her before. She was recalculating. I knew that look. I'd worn it across a desk 100 times, watching a number come out wrong. "You should have told us," she said finally, and her voice had cooled all the way down. "If that's true, you should have said something. 6 years. You let us think." "I let you think you did it yourselves," I said gently. "You wanted that. I gave it to you. I'd have given it to you forever." I paused. "Right up until the night you told me my generation had it easy. The dinner ended early after that. People remembered places to be. I stayed to help Megan and Lucas with their pajamas because the children hadn't done anything, and I wasn't going to punish them for their parents. Megan brought me Brittany's tablet so I could read her the dinosaur book she likes, the one with the app that makes the sounds. The reading app wasn't open. A group chat was. I'm not proud that I looked. I'm also 68, and I had just learned what was being planned for me above a garage, so I will not pretend I looked away. The thread was Brittany, Trevor, and a contact saved as Dale Galloway Agent. There was a screenshot of the 5-bedroom house. There was a draft listing for Linden Court. Photos taken, a price set, ready to publish, and there were messages, scrolling back days. Trevor, she'll fold. She always folds. Brittany, once Wendy's in the studio, she won't make a fuss. She's too soft to say no. Brittany, we list the day after the party. Equity covers the down payment. We're golden. The agent, just need both owners to sign. Should be quick. Both owners. He didn't know there were 3 names that mattered on that loan, and that one of them was sitting on the plaid couch reading about a Tyrannosaurus. I read it twice. Then I closed the tablet, finished the dinosaur book, kissed Megan's forehead, and drove home with my hands very steady on the wheel. They'd already written the listing. They'd already priced my grandchildren's home. They just hadn't told the one person who'd been quietly holding it up the whole time, because they were certain she was too soft to say no. We would see about soft. I didn't sleep much. I didn't rage either. Rage is loud, and loud was never my instrument. Instead, around midnight, I made tea and took the manila folder to the kitchen table, the one Tom built the year Aaron was born. I laid the papers out under the lamp, one by one, the way I used to lay out a file before a difficult meeting. The original note from 2020, there were our three names, Aaron, Brittany, and Wendy Ashford, co-borrowers, joint, and several, which is a phrase that means the bank can come to any of us for all of it. The 2024 refinance, my signature, my reserves, the lump I'd put down to stop the foreclosure, none of them like to remember. The new equity statement showing exactly how much of that house's value had come not from their discipline, but from my deposit, and the auto draft history. Page after page. The first of the month, $1,900. The first of the month, $1,900. 6 years of a sentence repeating itself in a language only I had been reading. Your generation had it easy, I said out loud to the empty kitchen, and I almost laughed. I understood sitting there that they hadn't lied to their friends. Exactly. From where they stood, they really had done it themselves. They'd never seen the foundation. You don't when someone pours it while you sleep. Well, it was time they saw it. All of it. In daylight, with witnesses, on paper they couldn't argue with. I just had to decide how. If you've ever been the quiet one, the one who keeps the lights on and lets someone else take the bow, you already know the strange loneliness of it. You tell yourself the giving is enough. You tell yourself you don't need the thank you. And mostly that's true, right up until the day they hand your gift back to you with a price tag and call it your debt. If this story is landing somewhere tender, do me a favor. Stay with me to the end. There's a reason I'm telling it. In the morning, I called Diane. We're friends now, not just former colleagues. She knows my coffee order and I know her grandkids' names. But I called her this time the way I'd call a banker, because that's what I needed. Di, I said, I need you to pull a file. The Ashford loan, Linden Court. I heard her chair creak as she sat forward. Keys clicking. A pause that went on a beat too long. Okay, she said slowly. I've got it up. Another pause. Wendy, can I ask you something? Off the record. Always. Do they know what's actually in here? She said. Aaron and his wife. Do they understand what your name does on this loan and what that refinance means for their equity? I looked out the window at my small porch, my quiet street, the life I'd built to be exactly this peaceful. No, Diane, I said, I don't think they have the faintest idea. What Diane walked me through over the next 20 minutes, I already half knew, but hearing a second banker say it made it solid. You're a co-borrower, joint and several, she said. Not a guarantor in some back seat, a full borrower. That equity they want to pull out? On paper, a big share of it traces straight to your 2024 paydown and your reserves. It's not money they saved. It's money you put in. And to take it out, I said, to do their cash out and roll it into Galloway. They need to refinance, Diane said, which means a new loan, which means qualifying again. And Wendy, I'm looking at their income right now. On their own, without you on the note, without your reserves behind it. She exhaled. They don't qualify for what they've got, let alone $700,000. They'd need you to sign. Or they'd need to remove you, and they can't carry it alone if they do. There it was, clean as a closing statement. Without me, there was no bigger house. Without me, there was barely this one. Every dream Brittany had toasted over dessert ran straight through a signature she assumed I'd give because I was too soft to refuse. What do you want to do? Diane asked. I thought about Megan asking why Grandma couldn't have a real room. I thought about a draft listing, already photographed, waiting to go live the day after a party. I want to do this correctly, I said, on paper in front of people, once. Can you stay near your phone next Sunday at 2? There was one more thing I had to settle before Sunday, and it surprised even me. For 6 years, my whole geography had been built around those children. 2 towns, twice a week, every holiday. I had never once wanted to be anywhere else. But sitting in Diane's confirmation, a different door swung open. My oldest friend, Ruth, lives in a little community over in Plain City. Porches, a walking path, a coffee shop where they know your name by the second visit. A cottage 2 doors down from her had been for sale for months. Ruth had sent me the listing in the spring, half teasing. "Come be old with me, Wendy," she'd written. I'd laughed it off. I had grandchildren to raise after all. The offer was still open. I called the seller's agent that afternoon and asked if it was. It was. I sat with that for a long time, because choosing it meant admitting something I'd been refusing to admit for years, that the arrangement had stopped being love a while ago and turned into a job I'd been doing for people who'd started to bill me for the privilege. For 6 years, there was nowhere on earth I'd rather have been than near those 2 kids. That afternoon, for the first time, that changed. Not because I loved them less, because I'd finally heard, out loud, exactly how little my staying was worth to the adults in charge of them. I told the agent I'd want to move quickly. Then I made 1 more cup of tea and started getting ready for a party. Brittany called Wednesday, all sunshine again, as if the dinner had never tilted a glass. "We're having a little open house Sunday," she said. "Just 20 or so people. A vision party. We're sharing the Galloway plans, getting everyone excited for the new chapter." A beat. "We'd love you there, Wendy. You could help keep an eye on the kids while the grown-ups talk." While the grown-ups talk. I had run loan committees that moved more money than Brittany would see in her life, but on Sunday I was to be the help. "I'll be there," I said warmly. 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock. Bring the apple cake? "I'll bring everything," I said. She missed it. She thanked me twice and hung up. I understood what the party really was. It wasn't a celebration. It was a commitment device. Brittany was the kind of woman who made things true by announcing them to a room full of witnesses. If 20 friends heard about Galloway, about the pool and the office and the new chapter, then it had to happen, because Brittany could not survive those same 20 friends watching it not happen. She was building herself an audience to make the dream binding. I was very willing to attend, because an audience, it turns out, works 2 ways. The same room she'd gathered to lock herself into the story was the perfect room in which to tell her the truth. If she wanted witnesses, I would simply make sure they witnessed the right thing. I spent Saturday copying documents and charging my phone. She couldn't even wait for the party. Saturday evening, Brittany drove over to my house, unannounced, which she never did, with a folder of her own and that bright, managed smile. She sat at my kitchen table, declined tea, and slid a document across to me like a waitress delivering a check. "So, boring grown-up stuff," she said, light as anything. "Since you're technically on the loan," which, by the way, was so sweet of you, we had no idea. "The refinance for Galloway is just cleaner if you're not. The bank said it simplifies everything. It's basically a formality." It was a quitclaim, paired with an authorization to refinance. In plain terms, I would give up my interest in Linden Court, release the equity to them, and clear myself off the loan so they could borrow against my deposit without me in the room. For nothing, not a dollar back, not a thank you that counted. "Sign here," Brittany said, tapping the line, her nail clicking the paper twice. "You won't really need it. It's just our house anyway." "You won't really need it." I looked at her face. So hopeful, so certain this was the easy part. And I thought about how many times in 32 years I'd watched someone slide a document towards someone else with exactly that smile, betting on trust to skip the reading. "I'll read anything before I sign it, Brittany," I said pleasantly. "You know that about me. I read the fine print for a living." Her smile held, but something behind it flickered. "Of course," she said. "Take your time." I took my time. I read it the way I used to read the ones designed to be skimmed, slowly, line by line, out loud in places, just to watch her wait. It was exactly what I expected. It stripped my interest, released my equity, removed my name, and gave me nothing in return but the warm feeling of having helped. There was even a notary line ready, because she'd been that sure. I set it down. I capped my own pen and laid it beside the document, parallel, neat. "No," I said. Just the one word in my kitchen, under Tom's light. Brittany blinked. No, to reading more. Or, no to signing, I said. I'm not giving up my interest in that house. Not for the refinance, not for Galloway, not for nothing. The equity you want to spend is mine. I put it there. I'm not going to sign a paper pretending I didn't. The managed smile finally slipped all the way off. Wendy, she said, and the warmth was gone, replaced with something flatter and harder. You're being difficult. This is for the children, for their schools, for their future. Then their future can include knowing where their house came from, I said. She gathered her folder, stood, and looked down at me with the expression I imagined she'd once given the girl who held her nose. You're going to feel very small about this later, she said. Maybe, I said. I felt small before. I survived it. Drive safe, Brittany. I'll see you tomorrow at 2. She went home and changed the story. Of course she did. It's the only weapon she's ever fully trusted. Aaron called me at 10 that night, and I could hear her in the room behind him, feeding him lines. Mom, Brittany says you're refusing to help with the paperwork, he said. She says she's worried about you, that maybe you're getting confused about the money, mixing things up. Confused. The oldest trick there is for a woman over 65. The moment you stop being useful, you become unreliable. I'm not confused, Aaron, I said evenly. I can tell you the exact figure of every payment I've made on that house since 2020. Can you? Silence, Brittany's voice low, urgent behind him. She also said, Aaron's voice dropped, ashamed of the next part before he said it. She said it feels like you're trying to control us. With money. Holding the house over our heads. And there was the second blade. First confused, then controlling. A woman who gives quietly is loving. The second she stops, she's manipulative. They'd known about my 6 years of payments for exactly 4 days, and they'd already found a way to make my generosity the crime. Aaron, I said, I have never once mentioned that money. Not in 6 years. The only person holding it over anyone's head is the one who found out it existed and immediately tried to get me to sign it away. I let that sit. We'll talk tomorrow at the party with everyone there. I think that's best. Think. He didn't understand what I meant. He would. I want to be honest with you about something. Because by now you might be picturing me as cold. I wasn't cold. I cried a little that night, alone, at Tom's kitchen table. Not because I doubted myself, because I was about to lose the easy, pretend version of my family. The one where I kept quiet and they kept smiling, and we all agreed not to look directly at the truth. Here's what I'd decided. I wasn't going to sneak. I wasn't going to send a lawyer's letter in an envelope and let them save face in private. They had chosen, again and again, to make my smallness public. The studio, the help with the kids, the laughter. So the truth would be public too. Same room, same audience. Once, cleanly, and then never again. If you've spent your life being the one who absorbs things quietly so the family stays comfortable, hear me on this. A boundary you set in private, they can rewrite. A boundary you set in front of witnesses, with the documents in your hand, they have to actually hear. You're not being cruel. You're just refusing, finally, to be the only person in the room who isn't allowed to tell the truth. I packed the manila folder. I packed copies. 3 sets, because a banker always brings copies. I texted Diane. Sunday, 2 o'clock, stay near the phone. She wrote back 1 word. Standing by. If Brittany wanted an audience to make her dream binding, I would bring the documents to match it. Then I turned off the light over Tom's table and went to bed, and I slept. Finally, like the foundation under me was solid, because it was. It always had been. Sunday came up bright and cold, the kind of clear autumn afternoon that makes Ohio briefly beautiful. I made the apple cake because I'd said I would, and because there was no reason the cake should suffer for what the adults had done. I dressed carefully. I wore the blue blouse Tom always said matched my eyes, the one I save for the days I need to feel like myself all the way through. I put the 3 folders in my tote, on top of the cake carrier, and I checked my phone twice. Battery full, Diane's number at the top of the screen, the volume up. Before I left, I stood for a moment in my small, quiet living room and looked at it. The porch, the plaid couch, the life I'd kept deliberately simple. In a few weeks, if all went the way I now intended, it would be a different, small, quiet house, 2 doors down from Ruth, with a coffee shop that would learn my name. I wasn't nervous. That surprised me. I think when you've spent decades watching other people's reckonings arrive across a desk, you stop being afraid of your own. I picked up the cake and the folders. I locked the door. Then I drove over to my son's house to tell the truth in front of 20 people. The house on Linden Court looked its best that day, which felt right. It always did clean up beautifully. I had reason to know. 20-some people filled the open downstairs. Brittany's friends, a few neighbors, her sister and Trevor, a sleek man in a blazer I pegged immediately as Dale the Galloway agent. There was catered food and a folding easel by the fireplace, holding a vision board, glossy photos of the 5-bedroom house, paint swatches, the word dream in cursive across the top. Brittany was radiant, moving through her audience, collecting their excitement. She dressed for it. She dressed Megan and Lucas for it too, little outfits, props in the photo of the perfect family leveling up. I set the apple cake on the kitchen counter and kept my tote on my shoulder. Around 2, Brittany tapped her glass. She does love tapping a glass, and gathered the room. "Thank you all for coming," she said, beaming. "Aaron and I have something to share. After years of hard work, of doing this all ourselves," her eyes flicked to me just once, a tiny dare, "we are buying our dream home in Galloway." Applause, phones up, recording. "And the best part," she went on, gesturing toward me with a hostess's flourish, "Grandma Wendy is going to come live in the cutest little studio above the garage and help with the kids. One big, happy family." The room cooed. Someone said how lovely. Megan looked at me across the heads of the adults, uncertain, remembering her own unanswered question about a real room. I smiled back at Megan. Then I stepped forward. "Before anyone toasts the equity," I said, "I think you should all know whose it is." I said it pleasantly, at a normal volume, the voice I'd used to open 10,000 difficult meetings. It carried because the room had gone curious and quiet, the way rooms do when an old woman they'd dismissed suddenly speaks like she's done it before. I took my wine glass from the counter, full because I still hadn't touched a drop, and I set it down on the table, steady, no tremor, a small, deliberate sound. Then I took the manila folder out of my tote, soft yellow at the edges, and laid it beside the glass. "Brittany," I said, "you told everyone tonight that you did this yourselves. I let you tell that story for 6 years because I love you and because pride is a fair thing to want." I opened the folder. "But you're about to sell this house and spend the money inside it, and these good people are about to toast a plan that doesn't actually exist. So it's time for the boring grown-up stuff." Brittany's smile had frozen into something painted on. "Wendy," she said, a warning and a plea. "Not now." "Now is exactly the right time," I said. "You picked the room. I'm only using it." I slid the first page out into the light, turned so the nearest guests could see, and I felt the whole party lean in. 20 people who'd come to celebrate a dream, suddenly reading a mortgage note over my shoulder. Dale the agent set down his drink. "This is the loan on this house," I said, holding up the note. "Read the names. Aaron Ashford, Brittany Ashford, and Wendy Ashford. 3 borrowers, joint and several. I've been on this mortgage since the day they bought it, because in 2020 their income didn't qualify, and mine and my reserves did." A murmur moved through the room. Brittany's sister looked at Brittany. Brittany looked at the floor. "This one," I said, laying down the next page, "is from 2024, a refinance. That spring, Aaron lost his job and this mortgage went into default. 60 days. There was a letter on that very counter with the word foreclosure on it." Aaron flinched at the word. I saw a guest's eyebrows climb. "I brought it current. I put my own money down, real money, the kind you can count, to save this house. That's where most of the equity in this room came from. Not from years of discipline. From that afternoon and from this. I set down the auto draft record, page after page of it, and let them see the length of it. Every month, on the first since 2020, $1,900 out of my account into this house. 6 years. I looked up. That's the equity you were about to toast. That's the down payment for Galloway. It has my name on it because it came from my hands. The room was completely silent now. The vision board with the word dream sat there glowing on its easel, suddenly absurd. Trevor, who always had something to say, had nothing to say. Megan had crept to the edge of the kitchen and was watching her grandmother with wide, serious eyes. Brittany made a sound that was halfway between a laugh and a gasp. None of this is even real, she said to the room. She's confused. She's an old woman. She's mixed up. Then let's ask the bank, I said, and I picked up my phone. I dialed Diane and pressed the speaker button, and I held the phone up in the center of that quiet room so it could hear and be heard. She answered on the first ring. This is Diane Pruitt. Diane, it's Wendy. I'm at Linden Court with family and friends. You're on speaker. Would you confirm a few facts about the loan on this property? I have your permission as a co-borrower to discuss it. Of course, Diane said, her banker's voice crisp and carrying. Go ahead. Am I a co-borrower on this mortgage? You are. Full co-borrower, joint and several, since origination in 2020. Did I refinance and bring the loan current in 2024 to stop a foreclosure? You did. You also contributed a substantial principal paydown at that time. It's documented. And if Aaron and Brittany wanted to refinance now, to pull out equity and buy another home, could they qualify on their own, without me on the loan and without my reserves behind it? There was the briefest pause, the kind a kind person takes before saying a hard, true thing to a room full of strangers. No, Diane said clearly. Based on their current income, they would not qualify to refinance this property on their own, and certainly not for an additional, larger purchase. Without you, the numbers don't support it. The word no landed in that room like a dropped plate. Brittany's mouth opened and closed. Aaron had sat down on the arm of the sofa, his face in his hands. 20 guests stood frozen, holding catered shrimp, watching a dream evaporate in real time, confirmed by a stranger's voice on a speakerphone. Thank you, Diane, I said gently. That's all I needed. And I hung up. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Brittany came apart the way I'd known she would, not with an apology. People like Brittany almost never apologize at the moment they're caught. They detonate. You did this on purpose, she said, her voice climbing, tears arriving right on schedule. You waited. You waited until everyone was here to humiliate me. After everything Do you know what it's like trying to give your kids a good life while your own mother-in-law sits on a secret like this? She turned to the room, to her audience, trying to win them back. She's been controlling us with money this whole time. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. That was the whole point. She was the fire, and I was the thing that doesn't catch. Brittany, I said quietly, 3 weeks ago at this table you told me my generation had it easy. The room turned back to me. You're right that it was easy, I said. For you, it was easy because I made it easy. Quietly. For 6 years. The handshake and a prayer house, the no handout story, the dream you toasted tonight, every bit of the easy in your life that you've been congratulating yourselves for, I paid for on the first of the month while you slept. I let it land. I have always known how to let a thing land. I never asked for credit, I said. I'm not asking for it now. I'm just done being told the foundation I poured was solid ground you stood on by yourselves. Brittany had no answer. For the first time since I'd known her, the curated woman had nothing curated to say. Then I did the thing I'd actually come to do, because being right in front of a room is not the same as being free, and I wanted to be free. So here's what happens now, I said calmly to Aaron and Brittany both. I'm not signing the quitclaim. I'm not authorizing a refinance. There will be no Galloway, not on my equity, not with my name. You can keep this house exactly as it is if you can carry the real payment yourselves, the whole one. Starting the first of next month, the $1,900 stops. Aaron looked up. Mom, And I won't be taking the studio, I said. Brittany, you were right about one thing. I looked at her and I almost smiled. I won't really need it. I'm buying a little place near Ruth in Plain City. I close in 3 weeks. A guest near the door quietly set down her plate and left. Then another. The party was over. Everyone in the room knew it. I crossed to Megan, who'd been watching all of it with those serious eyes, and I knelt down to her level. I did not say a single unkind thing about her parents. They were still her parents. You asked at dinner why Grandma couldn't have a real room, I said softly. You were paying attention, sweet girl. Always keep doing that. I hugged her. I'm going to have a wonderful real room, and you're going to come see it. Then I picked up my tote, left the cake on the counter for the guests, and walked out the front door of the house I'd saved, into the bright, cold afternoon, lighter than I'd been in years. Here's how it actually shook out. In the weeks after, because I know you want the receipts and not just the feeling, there was no Galloway. There was never going to be, once the math was in daylight. The agent, DIL, stopped returning calls within the week. Brittany's friends, who had stood in that living room and watched the dream get confirmed dead by a banker on speakerphone, were suddenly busy. The "we did it ourselves" story doesn't survive 20 witnesses learning otherwise all at once. That part, I think, hurt her more than the money, and the money was real too. When my $1,900 stopped on the first, Aaron and Brittany met the actual cost of their house for the first time in 6 years. The full payment ran a little over $2,600 a month. They'd been feeling about $740 of it. The rest had been me. Now it was theirs, all of it. And the bigger house wasn't a question anymore, keeping this one was. Trevor, who'd joked about handing out mortgages, stopped coming around almost immediately. People like Trevor circle money, and there was no longer any of mine to circle. I want to be careful here, because it would be easy to enjoy this part too much. I didn't enjoy it. I'd have given them that $1,900 happily for the rest of my life. The tragedy isn't that I stopped. It's that they only noticed I'd been giving it once I did. I closed on the cottage in Plain City 18 days later. Ruth brought wine over the first night. We sat on my new porch, and for the first time in a very long time, nothing buzzed on my phone on the first of the month. Aaron came to see me about a month after I moved, alone, which told me something. He sat on my new porch and turned his coffee cup in his hands for a while before he managed to look at me. I knew, he said finally, about the money. Not the amount, not the details, but I knew you were covering us, and I let myself not know it because it was easier. He swallowed. And when Brittany started in about the studio, I let her talk, because that was easier too. I've been choosing easier my whole life, Mom. You're the one who paid for it. It was the most honest thing my son had said to me in years, and I'm not too proud to tell you it loosened something in my chest. This is the near thing about people. They are rarely all villain. Aaron wasn't cruel. He was just a man who'd spent his life looking away, and the looking away had a price, and I'd been paying it. I forgive you, I told him, and I meant it. But I want you to hear the new arrangement because there is one. He nodded. I'm still your mother, I said. I will love those kids until I die. I'll be at every birthday, every play, every scraped knee you'll let me near. I held his eyes. But I am not your lender anymore. Not ever again. If you want me in your life, you want Wendy. Not the woman who quietly pays the difference. That woman has retired. They kept the house. They learned to afford it, which is a thing people can do once they actually have to. I hear it was a hard year. I think it may have been a good one for them, in the way hard years sometimes are. Brittany and I are cordial now, in the careful way of two women who finally understand each other. She has never apologized, and I've stopped waiting for it. But she also never again told a room that she did it all herself, at least not where I might be standing. That's its own kind of progress. My life in Plain City is small and bright. Ruth is 2 doors down. The coffee shop learned my name by the second visit exactly as I'd hoped. Megan calls me on weekends to tell me about dinosaurs and injustices on the playground. And every few weeks, Aaron drives the kids out and they get the run of my real, wonderful room. On the first of the month, my phone is quiet. I didn't realize for 6 years how loud that little buzz had been until it finally stopped. I sleep very well now. If there's one thing I'd hand you from all of this, it's this. Generosity given in silence is still a gift, and a beautiful one. But the day the people you carried hand it back to you with a price tag and call it a debt you owe them, it stops being love you're protecting. It's just a door you forgot to lock, so know whose name is on the paper. And keep your own keys. That's my story. 6 years of quiet and a folder I almost left in the car. If it reminded you to know whose name is on the paper, take that as a sign. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.